The archive room on Zethar Prime. The archive room smelled of ozone and old data. Dust didn't gather on Zethar Prime, too sterile, too climate regulated, but something older than dust hung in the air. Maybe it was memory. Or ghosts. Captain Elias Wren sat quietly in the back row, posture straight, expression unreadable, hands clasped on his lap. His shoulders, broad and worn beneath his civilian jacket, carried 20 years of war. His hair, peppered with silver, was cropped tight like a habit he never broke. Beside him, a Varlax archivist whispered to another in the melodic slither of their native tongue. Elias caught only a few words. Terra, extinction level, primitive rage. The room dimmed. A circular holoprojector spun to life in the center of the chamber. Rows of galactic scholars and military observers leaned forward. The air buzzed with anticipation. This recording, said the presenter, a four-eyed Solarian named Meltor, is from the final days of Earth's Eastern Pacific Campaign, circa 2371 by Terran reckoning. We display it today not as condemnation, though one might argue for it, but as historical analysis. Behavioral patterns. Psychological response to existential threat. A flicker. Then the hologram bloomed into life. Elias didn't blink. Rain fell hard on the scorched ruins of what was once a coastal metropolis. Streets cracked open like broken ribs. Air thick with plasma smoke. Human infantry, mud-caked, ragged, screaming, charged through wreckage with fire in their eyes. They didn't fight with grace. They didn't retreat. They bled forward, even as orbital bombardments lit the sky behind them like angry gods throwing lightning. Meltor narrated over the images. Note the Terran units here, Alpha 7. Severely outnumbered. 0 air support. No shield tech. And yet their forward assault continues. A Sarnathi general raised a clawed hand. Why didn't they evacuate? Those casualties are not even the worst, Meltor replied. This is standard behavior. Fight to the end. Their species frequently demonstrates martyr-level commitment under irrational odds. Observe the individual here, designated Sergeant Wren. Elias's throat tightened, but his face didn't move. On screen, a younger version of himself, mud-streaked, face streaked with blood and rain, dragged a fallen comrade behind cover. Pulse rifle in one hand, sidearm clenched between his teeth. He didn't hesitate. He didn't cry out. He just moved. Gasps echoed from the alien seated nearby. He lost 2 limbs in this sequence, Meltor continued, and still re-entered combat within 11 minutes. A silence settled like ice. He is still alive? A voice asked from the shadows. Yes, Meltor said. Retired. Records state he vanished after the war. No known political affiliations. No post-military activity logged. Elias's jaw clenched slightly. Then a snide chuckle broke the quiet. It came from the front, Councillor Draverin, a Creel ambassador whose race had observed humanity's war from orbit, never engaging. And yet they expect to join the interstellar concord? These creatures? Who butcher their own planet in rage and madness? Elias finally moved. Just his eyes. Slowly upward. Locking on Draverin. Draverin continued, voice oily. They destroy even as they defend. There is no distinction. The footage shows it clearly, a madness in their blood. Honorless survival. Pain worship. This is what they offer us in diplomacy. Meltor hesitated. It is not our position to. I fought there, Elias said, voice flat, unraised. Heads turned. Even the projector stuttered. The footage froze on his face, young, furious, fearless. Draverin blinked, then sneered. You were in this footage? I am this footage, Elias said. His voice wasn't loud, but it filled the room. He stood, not with ceremony, but quiet weight. There was no anger in his voice. Only memory. That day, we had 98 left. Against 4,000. No air support. No evac. No hope. Our orders were to delay. Hold the line long enough to extract civilians from the South districts. We didn't win. But they didn't get past. A silence hung. Elias gestured to the frozen image. That wasn't rage. That was discipline. That wasn't madness. That was choice. A young work scholar raised a trembling hand. But the screams. The destruction. Some of your people set themselves on fire to take down a walker. Yes, Elias said. Because we knew if we didn't, they'd burn everything anyway. We did it to stop something worse. He stepped forward, slowly, one boot echoing against the polished floor. You see war in numbers. In casualties. In strategy failures. But we lived it breath by breath. You think it was horror? Elias's voice dropped to a whisper. You have no idea what horror is until you bury someone you loved, then get up because there's no one left to finish the job but you. No one dared interrupt. I don't ask you to admire it, Elias continued. Hell, I don't even ask you to understand it. But don't you sit there, behind your polished council benches, and call it madness. We didn't fight because we wanted to. We fought because we had to. He looked directly at Dravern now. And we still fight. Just not with rifles anymore. The Creel ambassador shifted uncomfortably, eyes flicking away. Meltor cleared his throat. Captain Wren. Not a captain anymore, Elias said. Just a man who remembers. He sat down again. No drama. No victory. Just silence. Then the hollow projector flickered off. And no one looked at the footage the same way again. Elias didn't return to his quarters after the session. He walked instead, slowly, through the curved steel corridors of the Zetharian Central Assembly. The walls hummed with quiet energy, the light cool and white, nothing like Earth's yellow sun or the glow of fire across ruined buildings. A protocol drone passed him and gave a courteous nod. He ignored it. He wasn't angry. He'd expected them to gawk at the footage. But something deeper bothered him. How quickly they'd turned memory into spectacle. Suffering into policy. That was the galaxy's talent, after all, sanitizing horror with distance. He rounded a corner and paused. Counselor Veltari stood ahead, waiting. She was tall, insected, with 4 translucent arms folded in a cross pattern that signaled thoughtfulness in her species. Her carapace shimmered faintly under the ambient light. You stayed silent during the broadcast, Elias said, stopping a few paces away. I listened, she replied. Unlike Dravrin. He gave a humorless nod. Listening's rare. She tilted her head. What they saw today unsettled them. That is a beginning. That wasn't the beginning. That was the end of something, Elias murmured. The real beginning was when we realized no one was coming to help. Veltari stepped closer. The footage was more than they expected. It was raw. Personal. They are used to numbers, to sterile battlefield reports. But your presence cut through that. That's not always a good thing, Elias muttered. She hesitated. They asked for a monster. You showed them a man. He glanced sideways at her. You didn't come just to compliment me. No, she admitted. There's a private Concord meeting tomorrow. Off record. You're invited. Why? Because what you said shook them, she replied. And because there's a proposal. One that concerns humanity's future. Elias frowned. You're not offering us Concord membership, are you? Not yet. But something related. Elias exhaled slowly. Fine. I'll come. But I won't wear a uniform. I burned that long ago. She gave a short nod and turned to leave. Veltari, Elias called. She stopped. Why do you care? He asked. She paused. Because I saw the original footage years ago. Before it was approved for viewing. And I noticed something the others missed. What? You carried that wounded soldier for 7 blocks. Through crossfire. You didn't have to. He was already gone. Elias said nothing. You weren't saving him, she added. You were giving him a proper death. He looked away. He was 19. Deserve better than being left in a gutter. She nodded once and disappeared down the corridor. The meeting chamber was smaller. Fewer bodies, more tension. Only 8 delegates this time, seated around a triangular table built from obsidian-like material mined from Proxera V. Elias stood near the far wall, arms crossed, eyes scanning. Dravrin was there again. So was Meltor. Veltari sat at the far point, wings folded, silent. The room quieted as High Arbitrator Senkai entered. An ancient being of fluid light and chrome plating, their presence was rare. Elias straightened slightly. We convene in closed session. Senkai began, voice a blend of static and rhythm. Topic: Human inclusion in the Concord's emergent defense network. Not full citizenship, yet, but a classified position within our border resilience protocol. Dravrin scoffed. You want them in our defense grid? That's inviting a fire into the barracks. Senkai turned their gaze to Elias. Captain Wren. Speak freely. I'm no captain, Elias replied evenly. Senkai inclined their head. Elias, then. We propose a joint strategic advisory corps. Multi-species. 5 advisors per quadrant. You'd represent humanity. Not just symbolically. Strategically. We want your instincts. Elias blinked. You want me to train your people how to think like humans in war? To anticipate unpredictability. To understand what terrifies the enemy. And what drives us to stand after everything else collapses. Elias folded his arms. Why now? A Harkoni general answered. Because your enemies have learned from you. The ones who fought you now mimic you. They adapt fast. They don't fear death the way they used to. Elias sat quietly, absorbing that. Dravrin hissed. So we fight madness with more madness? No, Elias said. You fight ignorance with truth. Dravrin glared. Truth? Your species cannibalized its own world. Elias leaned forward slightly. And yet we're still here. Meltor interjected. The Council has reviewed dozens of species histories. Only one ever pushed back against the Zarkis swarm and one. Only one repelled the Black Hole Syndicate without energy shields. Only one developed nanoblade tech under bombardment with no supply chains. Humans. Elias exhaled. So you want the edge? Not the politics. Not the culture. Just the instinct. We need the instinct. Senkai confirmed. And what do I get? Elias asked. The room hesitated. Veltari finally spoke. You get a seat. Not just in war, but in deciding peace. Elias looked at her. That mattered more than any weapon. A pause. Then he nodded once. I'll do it. Later that night, Elias stood alone on the observation deck. Below, the stars stretched wide, endless, cold, magnificent. His reflection floated faintly in the window, layered over the void. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small metal disc. Scratched. Faintly burned. He flipped it open, inside, a photo of Alpha 7, his old squad. All of them young. All of them smiling before the mission. Only 2 had made it out. His voice was low. They want me to teach them. Show them how we think. How we don't give up even when everything burns. He looked out at the stars again. We didn't survive because we were strong. We survived because we remembered why it mattered. He closed the locket. The war was over. But the memory was still marching. The war table was circular, low, and ancient, not in age, but in memory. It had seen projections of invasion routes, treaties drafted in fear, and the maps of dying worlds. Today, it displayed simulations, digital swarms, simulated fleets, endless zeros and ones forming the dance of destruction. Elias stood at the center. Arrayed around him were 20 strategists from across the galaxy. Harkoni war tacticians, Arak diplomats with translucent throats pulsing in thought, Solarian information analysts, even a cold-eyed Creel observer from Dravrin's delegation. Some wore uniforms with medals. Others robes lined with diplomatic seals. All were quiet. The hollow projector hummed, casting a battlefield into the air. A simulated skirmish played out, clean, efficient, clinical. When the hologram faded, the Iraq delegate looked up. "We modeled this based on your ground maneuvers in the Siege of Perth. Is this correct?" Elias shook his head. "It's not even close." The silence was immediate. "You're assuming we advanced in coordinated waves," he said. "We didn't. We didn't have time. Or enough men. We moved in pairs, improvised cover, split fire. Some of us didn't even have functioning comms. There was nothing elegant about it. But the final outcome was a win," the Harkoni strategist objected. "You broke their armored lines with 1/10 of the force." Elias nodded. "Because we stopped playing their game." He stepped closer to the table. "We tricked them into thinking we were retreating. Abandoned our southern front. They followed. We let them. Then buried them in rubble we detonated from a hospital's sub-basement." A murmur passed through the room. "You used the hospital?" the Creel officer asked, voice sharp. "It was already bombed flat. Everyone inside was gone," Elias said, calm and steady. "We turned grief into function. Not because we wanted to. Because we had to." He tapped the console, changing the map. "You want to learn how we think?" he asked, scanning the room. "Then stop simulating clarity. Our strength isn't in precision. It's in chaos. We operate where logic breaks down. We adapt. You simulate with clean variables. We fight with broken ones." Another flick. Another map. "This," he said, pointing, "is a civilian route. Not even reinforced. Your models say ignore it. But that's why it works. No one expects an assault through it. We used this kind of tactic during the Battle of Tharsis Ridge. Dug under utility corridors with repurposed mining gear. Took them from beneath. You broke multiple interstellar combat laws," the Solarian said, not accusing, just observing. Elias met his gaze. "That's war. It doesn't wait for the law to catch up." Another shift. Now a recorded real-time clip. Alpha 7, advancing through a firestorm, Elias dragging Corporal Reyes on one shoulder. Blood on concrete. Screams in the distance. Pulse fire overhead. A beacon of fury and resolve. "You call this brutality," Elias said, voice soft. "But this was duty. This is what it means when no one comes. When you are the last line between life and annihilation." The projection stopped. A pause followed. No one spoke. Then a young strategist, barely into her service cycle, whispered, "How do you live with it?" Elias took a moment before answering. "You don't," he said. "You carry it." The room held that weight. Veltari finally stepped forward from the observation tier. "Captain Wren was asked here not only to teach you tactics, but to show you what the cost of survival looks like. Not the tactics. The toll." Elias looked around. "You want the human edge. But the edge cuts both ways. If you learn from us, you inherit the scars too." The Creel delegate looked up. "So what is it then? What makes you survive what breaks everyone else?" Elias's expression didn't change. But his answer was immediate. "We remember." He gestured to the projection, to the ghostly echo of his past. "We remember every name. Every friend. Every failure. We hold the weight, because forgetting is how it wins. You're not asking for soldiers," he said. "You're asking for monsters who feel it all and keep going anyway." The room was still. "No one wants to be like us," he finished. "But when the skies burn, and the enemy has no mercy, who do you want standing next to you? Someone who's trained to win cleanly? Or someone who refuses to lose?" Sinkai, who had been silent until now, spoke. "The Concord recognizes the need for this program. Not to glorify war, but to understand the cost of avoiding it." The delegates nodded. Even the Creel, reluctantly. "You will lead this initiative," Sinkai said. "Your first trainees arrive in 3 days." Elias nodded. "Then we begin." That night, Elias returned to his room. Small. Functional. Clean. He sat on the edge of his cot and removed a case from under the bed. Inside, old medals. A pair of tags, one his, one from a man named Juno Dale, killed in year 5. A blood-stained patch from Alpha 7's shoulder insignia. He picked up the patch, thumb running over the faded thread. A chime at the door. Enter, he said. Veltari stepped in. They approved the full command. You'll have authorization over cross-species tactics. Access to restricted simulation chambers. Authority to redesign doctrine where necessary. He didn't look up. And the memory clause? Accepted. No recordings of human trauma may be used without your consent. He finally nodded. She stepped closer. Do you regret it? No. A beat passed. Do you fear they'll misuse what you teach? He looked up at her, eyes sharp. Only if I don't teach them everything. She hesitated. What's left to teach? Elias rose. That victory is not the same as survival. He turned toward the window, watching distant stars crawl across the black. And that survival is only worth something if you remember who you were before the war. Behind him, Veltari watched silently. Then she left, leaving him alone with the silence, and the stars that had never stopped burning.